Hello, my name is Kevin. I'm a church member here at Faith Baptist Riverside, and we'll be starting a series of short videos on the topic of Christian doctrine. And the first place that we have to start on that topic is to ask the question, what is doctrine? Doctrine in general means a coherent body of truth claims about a particular issue. When we turn to Scripture, we find the Scripture writers using the term to talk about a standard of truth as revealed by God in Scripture. So they refer to things like sound doctrine and wholesome doctrine to refer to God's teaching in Scripture. Now there's a second use of the term doctrine in Scripture that can sometimes create some confusion there, and that is someone's representation of the truth, whether their representation is sound or unsound. And so Paul tells Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 16 to watch carefully his life and his doctrine. And what he's saying there is he's urging Timothy to consider what he is representing as the truth and to make sure that it does in fact fit with what God has said. And so that raises the question then, how can someone know whether their doctrine is accurate? How can it be measured? And quite simply, it's measured by how well their representation of truth aligns with the truth laid down in Scripture. Again, that could either be to varying degrees. Paul is telling Timothy, watch your doctrine, be sure it accords with Scripture. But then the Bible also talks about doctrine that is false doctrine. In fact, the Bible even refers to doctrines that are taught by demons in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. And so those are obviously false representations of the truth. Now, in our day, there is yet another sense in which the term doctrine is used, and that can confuse things a bit further, but a modern sense of the term doctrine is often described as facts or data from the Bible, which churches are eager for you to memorize, and which often have little connection to your life as a Christian. And that unhelpful view of what doctrine is quite common. And if you have suffered from that wrong view of doctrine, let me encourage you to adopt a biblical view of doctrine. And one way that you can do that is recognizing that Scripture consistently places doctrine in connection with the measure of your godliness. For example, Paul tells Timothy that someone who is careless and doesn't work and doesn't provide for the dependents in their own home has bad doctrine, so much so that they've denied the faith and they're worse than an unbeliever. Not necessarily because of something they said about what Scripture says, but because of the way they're living that denies Scripture's truth. So Paul tells Timothy then to teach what accords or what fits with sound doctrine, with a doctrine of godliness. Scripture regularly places biblical truth in close connection with godly living. And so you can even take the book of Ephesians, for example, the first 3 chapters. Paul develops some biblical realities in Scripture, and in the next 3 chapters, the remaining 3 of the book, Paul devotes those chapters to how the believer should practice what is being taught in Scripture. And so there is a absolutely close connection in Scripture between what is taught in terms of sound doctrine and the godliness that flows from that. And what that means for you and I today is that if you meet someone whose life is marked by ungodliness, you can be 100% sure that they have bad, unwholesome doctrine. Because doctrine and godliness go together in Scripture.